Hi everybody, this is the second part of my Nikon F4 video, which I'm going to start off by mentioning the Viewfinder illumination switch, which I didn't cover before, and then I'm going to go on to the lens use for this camera, compatibility, and then show you it working with a couple of different flashes as well. So to start with the Viewfinder, normally lit by light from the outside through the finder, through these openings at the top of the finder and the bottom. The one at the bottom lights the top of the display, that shows the exposure compensation value and the frame counter, and the one at the top puts light on the display at the bottom that shows you the exposure mode, metering, shutter and aperture settings if appropriate. If obviously it gets a bit dark or not so good light, you can just turn on the illumination switch, little switch here on the top of the display, top of the panel. When the red dot's showing, it means the light is working, and it comes on with the display inside when you press the shutter halfway down. You can see it's working because it shows you the light from the outside, but from the inside you can see it lights at the bottom of the display and the top of the display. So it's a nice little feature of the camera. Right, I'm going to show you the lens compatibility with this camera now. I'll start off with a lens which was around at the time when this camera was being sold, and this is a Nikon AF 28-70mm lens, a standard autofocus lens. It has a aperture ring. It does have contacts, but it doesn't have a internal motor. It uses the drive for the focusing from the camera itself, because the Nikon F4 has an inbuilt autofocus motor. So it's a nice standard little zoom lens, good quality, nice good range for full frame of course, and you can put that on and it auto aperture indexes with the camera, and it will focus obviously, and you can use all the different modes on the Nikon F4, program mode, shutter priority, aperture priority and manual mode with this lens, so you get all the features. And it does have a little lock-in switch when it's set to f22, so it can be used in when using it in program mode and shutter priority mode. So nice little lens, that works fully obviously with the F4. Another lens very similar, which is more modern, which you can buy new today I believe. It's the Nikon AF 50mm 1.8D lens. The D is stands for distance basically, and it's used for in the flash photography and in the matrix metering as well. Again, this lens has got a aperture ring which can be locked at f22 for the programmed and shutter priority modes. Again, no motor built in, no autofocus motor built into this lens, so again it uses the shaft which makes contact from the camera to do the focusing. On. Again, it auto aperture indexes, and you get all the modes and everything from this camera. Nice lens, very sharp lens. Definitely recommend as a standard lens for this particular camera. Works well. Now we'll look at a G lens, which doesn't have a, stands for gelded, doesn't have a aperture ring at all. This is a Sigma lens rather than a Nikon lens, but works very similar. This does have a motor built into the lens itself, so it doesn't use the drive from the Nikon camera itself. It uses the contacts to drive the silent wave motor, or Sigma's equivalent, HSM motor. This does have optical stabilizer built in, but obviously the F4 doesn't make use of that feature, but you can leave it on or off on the lens, it doesn't make any difference whatsoever. So again, you mount the lens same way, and you can use this in program mode or shutter priority mode. You can't use aperture mode obviously, because you cannot set the aperture on this camera with this lens. There's no command dial or anything obviously, and you can't use manual for the same reason. But you can use shutter priority if you want some flexibility, where you set the shutter and the camera will automatically set the aperture for you. I'm just going to focus close enough here. Oh, there you go. Metering, just check. It does give you matrix metering, so you've got all the matrix options using this lens. This is a 70-300 lens, but any G lens you get the same type of operation with it as well. So that's that particular lens. I'll go back now, actually before the Nikon F4 was even made, and if you go back to this lens from 1979, this is a 50mm AI lens, 1.4, got an aperture ring. It has a prong as well for aperture indexing on the earlier F and F2 cameras. Manual focus of course, so there's no internal or use of the Nikon F4's focusing system. And with this lens again, you can just mount it as normal. Actually the prong doesn't do anything with this particular camera. And obviously you're limited with this lens as your mode. You can use aperture priority mode or manual mode. You can't use program mode with this lens. It just reverts back to aperture priority. Metering, it does give you matrix metering with this AI lens, so you get all the metering modes again as well. So as I say, aperture priority or manual mode, and again a nice quality lens, works well with this camera for manual focusing. Let's go back even further. I've got here a, before it actually became Nikon, it's a Nikon 1.4 lens. This came out in 1964, so if you think about it, that's 24 years before the Nikon F4 itself. You see it's a lot bigger than the other 1.4 lens I showed you, and this doesn't have, it has an aperture ring, but it doesn't have a aperture indexing ring, so it can't make use of the aperture indexing on the camera. Can't use that feature at all. And in fact, if you try to mount it as it is, it would break that off because it's flat. So what you need to do with the F4, which is a nice little feature, not many cameras can do this, you can press that little button in there, and the get it right, the little lever flicks back, so now you can mount this lens. It mounts as normal. You're limited to let me just check metering modes. You can use centre weighted or spot metering with this lens. So you can use centre weighted or spot metering. If you leave it on matrix metering, it just reverts to centre weighted. And with exposure, you're limited obviously to aperture, priority mode or manual. And to do the metering, you have to do what you call stop-down metering, because otherwise it can't read the aperture from the camera itself. It thinks you're working at full aperture all the time, 1.4. So obviously you won't get very good results if you have the lens set to f.6 and you take a picture, for example. So the way you would do it is to maybe focus first on the subject and set the aperture you want, and hold in the depth of field preview button, which brings down the aperture to the working aperture, and then you can half press the shutter, do the metering and make sure everything's okay, and then you can take the picture obviously. If you said it's manual mode, you can go through the same procedure and then you don't have to hold the button in while you actually take the shot itself. The other thing with the other, not with this particular one, but the other rings with the aperture, just flick that back. The other lens with the aperture ring, the numbers here in small little numbers, they line up with this little opening and the top of the finder, which allows you to see the aperture, read it directly from the lens, light falling on it, and you can see it in the top of the finder. So that's obviously very useful. Just have time to show you quickly some flash use with this. Just put the 50mm 1.8D back on. I've got a Speedlight, Nikon Speedlight SB28. I must say I'm not sure what year it's from, but I know it's quite a much older flash. Now it's onto this camera. You've got the thumb, the little wheel to screw it on, but you can say set this to program mode, camera's on, put the flash on, and you get through the lens, matrix metering, automatically sets the ISO, which is set on this camera to 200. It will automatically set the zoom as well with this flash. Obviously this is a standard lens, 50mm showing, and it will show you the aperture it's setting as well. So automatically sets up and you can just take a picture and works great. Switch that one off. And I'll just show it you working with the a newer flash unit from Nikon. Put a different lens on. Just have time to show you this. Put the zoom lens on so you can see that feature. This is the SB800 flash. Quite a modern flash, I'm sure you're aware. This uses the little rocker switch there to lock it onto the op shoe. But again, works in all the modes on this camera. Through the lens balance flash, as you can see, and if I zoom in on the lens, it automatically sets the zoom ranger there, and obviously the aperture it's using, and even shows you on this the distance you're going to get for the flash range. So that's a very newish flash, and again works on the Nikon F4 just fine. Okay, that's it for this Nikon F4 overview. Hope you enjoyed it.